Hi everyone, it's Laurel O'Sullivan, your Astro Advocate, here to talk to you about the full moon in Scorpio, occurring on April 26th at 10:32 p.m. Central Standard Time. This is an intense full moon because Scorpio is the most intense sign of the zodiac. In fact, this is my fourth time doing this video, so there is definitely some intensity coming with this full moon. So what is this full moon about? Well, it's about the things that Scorpio governs, which is about birth and death, transformation or intuition, shared resources with others, intimacy, things that are hidden that need to be brought to the surface. So there's something in your life that you are being asked to reassess with this full moon, because the full moon is about completions and endings. So think back to October 31st when we had the new moon in Scorpio. This is bringing to completion something that you first became aware of back on October 31st. And when we have a full moon, we have the moon being opposed by the sun. The sun is in Taurus, the moon is in Scorpio. So growth during this full moon is going to require us to release something to bring into balance that which is out of harmony in our life, because that's what an opposition represents in astrology. It wants us to bring something into balance. In Scorpio, we're being asked to own our truth and our power. Now, Taurus, on the other hand, Taurus rules all things that are stable, solid, concrete, above the surface, that we can see. It asks us what we're committed to. It represents our resources, what's solid and stable. So there's something between what you're committed to and what needs to be transformed. And in order to get what you want here, we have to be willing to let something go. It could be a turning point in your life, a revelation that you can no longer ignore or deny about who you are and what's important to you. We also have Saturn involved in this full moon. Now, Saturn is creating a lot of tension because it's creating what's called a T-square, a square to both the sun and the moon. And we experience that square as inner tension within us. Saturn is here, represents typically an authority figure, but Saturn is here to be our teacher, to teach us about timing, about owning our power, about responsibility, but it doesn't want us to rush. So this full moon is not the time to take action, but it is the time to go inward and to be reflective and to think about what's important and to be reevaluating our life, and to maybe perhaps be coming up with some kind of plan or next steps, but not to quite take the action yet. That will happen later in May, when we have the new moon in Taurus and the eclipse towards the end of the month. Now, 3 days after this full moon in Scorpio, we have the sun conjoining Uranus, because not only do we have the sun in Taurus, but we have the sun joined by Mercury and Venus and Uranus. That's called a stellium when you have a lineup of 3 or more planets. And so 3 days later, Uranus conjoins with the sun. This only happens once a year. This is a sudden awakening that could represent liberation, it could represent chaos, or a surprise in our life. So there's some kind of shakeup that's definitely wanting to happen. And then we have Saturn asking us to get quiet and reflective. So you can see how this is going to be a bit of an intense and maybe dramatic, or maybe it's going to be more reflective and meditative. And then the final planet we have involved is Mars, is in Cancer, making a trine, which is a harmonious or supportive aspect. But Mars is not very strong in Cancer, but there could be something involving the themes of family or nurturing that comes up as well, that you can draw upon for support during this full moon. But by far, Saturn is the strongest planet. And we'll feel this energy a week before and after the full moon. And of course, it can continue to carry over until the next new moon that happens later in the year. Okay, so how is this full moon going to be impacting you? I'm going to share how it's impacting all 12 signs. So in Aries, this is impacting your money houses, your second house and your 8th house. There's something that wants to come into greater balance between your resources and your shared resources from a partner. And Saturn is in the 11th house of your long-term goals. So that somehow is being impacted by this imbalance, and you're being asked to bring those into greater balance and greater harmony. There could be something to do with intimacy because of the imbalance in money, and that's impacting your long-term goals. Or it could be that you acquire some new resources, because 8th house is resources from others, maybe through taxes. Somebody might be getting tax returns or inheritance. There's something that's being wanting to be activated there between your resources and other resources, and how do you bring that into balance for the and how is that going to impact your long-term goals, which is represented by the 11th house. Taurus This full moon is impacting you and your committed partnerships. Could be business partnerships, could be intimate partnerships, but there's something that wants to come into greater balance and harmony. It could be the beginning or the ending of some of those relationships, but most likely for most of you, it's about creating some kind of greater balance. You have a desire that's somehow not being met, and then you have Saturn in your 10th house of career, which could be creating some pressure on those relationships. So you can see how basically this full moon for each one of us represents an area to harmonize these three areas of life and to create new beginnings, to let something go. So there might be something that needs to be renegotiated in your relationships. It's going to bring up a lot of emotions because Uranus is in your sign. It's in you and it wants to liberate you. So Taurus, you're going to be feeling this just like Scorpio with a little more pressure. And you're receiving help from Mars in the 3rd house of communications to somehow help you to be more proactive in your communication so that you can create, it could be a new business partnership that's ready to be formed, or it could be the ending of an old one or the renegotiation. So for Gemini, the full moon is happening in your 6th house, which represents work, your everyday life, schedule, commitments, and also your health. And there could be something in your work life that is coming to a head, something that might represent a power struggle or something to do with a project that perhaps isn't going very smoothly, and it's being opposed by these planets in your 12th house, which represents things hidden from us, things that are undoing, our subconscious, our fears, our addictions, and they could be sort of triggering this to find some better resolution for what's happening there in that 6th house, whether it's about bringing into balance things in your health or bringing to completion some kind of something to do with work project or creating change at your work. And then we have Saturn in the 9th house, which represents, again, authority figures, and the 9th house is kind of our worldview or how somebody sees something. So then you might be getting some advice from an authority figure that's causing or creating some extra tension here or giving you something to reflect or think about when it comes to your work or your health. So Cancer, this full moon is happening in your 5th house, which has to do with children, with our creative projects, with romance. There could be an escalation in your romantic relationship, perhaps the ending of a romantic relationship or something challenging happening in the life of your children. And it's being opposed by your 11th house of your goals and your friendships. So that could be creating some imbalance. And there's something that needs to be let go of here. And then we have Saturn in the 8th house, which is, again, the resources that we share for other, and that's creating some tension. So there might be an adjustment that needs to be made there between your 5th house, your 8th, and your 11th, which has to do with our children, our shared resources, and our long-term goals. But not just our children, again, romance and creative projects. For Leo, this full moon is happening in your 4th house, which is the house of family. So there could be some old memories or old sort of family patterns or traumas that get triggered for you. And it's being, the sun is in your 10th house of career. So there could be responsibilities and a need to even out the responsibilities between home and family in your career. Or to heal some of those old wounds so that you're better able to fulfill your career or your societal obligations, because the 10th house represents not just our career, but our role in society. And there's possibility, Leo, here for some deep healing, although there might be some uncomfortable feelings that get triggered. There could also be something to do with home, buying or selling a home or property or renovations that are occurring for you, Leo. And Saturn is in the 7th house of partnerships. So there's something happening from a partner that's impacting this that could make things a little bit more uncomfortable. There's an interplay happening between your partner, your career, and your home or family life. It could be maybe about letting a family member go. Maybe somebody is living with you, or maybe there's a relationship that was causing some harm or trauma and that is no longer in your best interest to maintain that. And somehow a partner is helping you, maybe in an uncomfortable way, come to this realization. So for Virgo, this full moon is happening in your 3rd house of communications. And so your communications could be fiery. So be careful around this full moon. It could be emotional and challenging. You might be feeling sort of rebellious. And Saturn is in your 6th house of work. So there could be something that's creating a strain there. Work is creating a strain on your communications, either with workmates, because 3rd house represents our workmates, people in our everyday environment. And then it's being opposed by the ninth house, which is third house is how you see things. The ninth house is how others see things. So there's some kind of tension, or you're being asked to transform how you're communicating, how you understand things. And you're getting some tension from that sixth house, which is both health, but also our work. So how do you bring these into greater balance? And you're receiving support from Mars in the 11th house of friends. It could be that there's also opportunities here for you, Virgo. The ninth house represents travel. There could be a new perspective, a new idea, or even a new opportunity with travel that comes to you as a result of this full moon. But it's not going to happen first without some tension or without some need to get greater clarity on how you see things and understand things in the world. Libra. This full moon is in your second house of resources. So there could be some strain or something that needs to be changed or adjust between your resources. And again, the opposite house is the eighth house of shared resources. Something, there might be some extra expenses, something that needs to come into balance, a need for resources to be coming in from another. It could be that you have a source of income that's being threatened, and you're called upon to have courage to cut it off or to make room for other sources of income that could be coming to you. But again, for all of us, there's going to be some tension that happens before we get to that liberation or that realignment that's going to happen later in the month. But another opportunity might appear for you when it comes to resources. You have Saturn in your fifth house, which could represent some experts who are trying to kind of give you advice, or it could have something to do with expenses related to your children. And so there's something that needs to come into balance in your life between your expenses and your income. It might be having to do with your children, and there might be an opportunity to realign those resources, because the fifth house wants us to have fun. But that fun might be coming with some extra expenses. And then we have Mars giving us a little bit of support from our 10th house, which is the career house. And so you might find some support with these resource shortages through your career. Scorpio, this full moon is happening in your house, and you might be finding yourself suddenly undergoing changes because in your partnership, it's being opposed by the sun and all those planets in the 7th house. So you're being called to examine and make some kind of a course correction in your life. And you have Saturn in the 4th house that's calling you to make some kind of a change to your family life as a result of this. And there could be the completing or the ending of some project potentially related to your home as well. So you have this imbalance between yourself and your partnerships that's needing to come into balance. And then you have Saturn in the 4th house. It's reminding you of your responsibilities to your family and how do you even that out. And you'll need to be making changes. The 1st house also represents your physical body. So there could be changes you are making to yourself and to your life direction, because the 1st house is you and your life direction. So these are intense decisions for you, Scorpio, because this is, after all, your full moon. And again, it might be bringing something to completion that first was brought up at the end of October of last year. So really important to really capitalize upon these full moons and to set our intention with an understanding of where that opportunity is for us for growth and forward movement. And then we have Mars in the 9th house, which is helping you. So there might be some advice you're getting from an authority figure or something you're learning from a teacher. The 9th house also represents teachers that might be creating something motivational here. So attitudes towards yourself, your relationships, and your home life are all being asked to come into greater balance here. Sagittarius, this moon is happening in the 12th house, which again is the house of things that are hidden from us. You might find it easy to complete and let go of something because that's the 12th house is ending. So this full moon might be a little easier for you. Then you have your sun in all those Venus, Mercury, and Uranus in your 6th house, triggering this release. So you could find yourself being sort of like extra psychic because the 12th house represents, again, our subconscious being activated. It also represents foreign countries. So there could potentially be an opportunity for you, Sagittarius, to travel. And then we have Saturn in the 3rd house of communication. So Saturn is here in that 3rd house to ask us to be really clear about how we're communicating what we're needing to let go of or release. It could be as well that with the new moon that comes later, that there is new work opportunities, but first you need to let go of something, or create some new routine, but first we need to let go of something potentially that is not helpful to us, because again, the 12th house is the house of addictions. Capricorn, this full moon is happening in your 11th house, which is your house of long-term goals, economic gains, basically your life direction. And your self-worth is changing. There's something that's wanting to change here. But first you might be experiencing some tension, not just in your long-term goals, but the 11th house also represents our associates, our friends. So you might need to shift something. Saturn is in your 2nd house of money, so that might be creating some tension. And then you have the sun and all those planets in Taurus in your 5th house of fun and romance. So they're but also represents entrepreneurship. So maybe you're being called to start your own business or to give more creative self-expression so that you can bring into balance those long-term goals you want to achieve. And there's some worry or some concern about the 2nd house, which is money and cash flow, and how might that be impacted. So it's important for you at this time of this full moon to assess, how can I bring those into greater balance so I can meet my long-term goals and fulfill my need to express myself creatively, or to it could be related to romance, to express myself in my romantic partnerships, or something to do with children. Basically, the 5th house is the house of inspiration and fun. So there's something around your long-term goals that's wanting you to bring into balance, to bring some extra dose of inspiration and fun, and you need to give some consideration about how your finances can support that or might be impacted by that. Aquarius, this full moon is in your 10th house, your career house. You can get emotional about your career. There's something that needs to be released or let go of or corrected there. And Saturn is in that 1st house. So Saturn is wanting you to, pushing you to make a change or to remove some kind of obstacle. And then you have, of course, the sun in Taurus in your 4th house of career or family. So there could be some endings in your career. It could represent potentially an authority figure or a boss that's leaving, and you need to make some kind of compromise between bringing into balance your career, your family life, and how does this impact you? Because you're changing in a significant way, and there could be a clash with an authority figure that you're trying to avoid, or a power struggle with your family. So there's definitely something here that's going to be changed for you, Aquarius, between your work and home life and you're wanting something to be different and to come into greater balance with your work, with your home life, and the obligations that you're feeling in both of those. Because right now, Aquarius, you're not necessarily feeling totally happy or satisfied with either one of those areas, because you're a fixed sign, and this full moon is in the fixed sign of Scorpio, so you're feeling this energy. Finally, Pisces, this full moon is happening in the 9th house. You might have a deep realization or see what the purpose of something that happened in your life that was potentially traumatic, because the 9th house, again, is how we see things. And the 3rd house is where all the sun, Venus, Mercury, and Uranus are hanging out, and that is the house of communication. So there could be something wanting to shift in how you understand and see things. And this could be particularly empowering for you. And one way to even out this imbalance in between how you understand things and how others see things and how you communicate with others is there could be some brainstorming to help you adjust your perspective. There could be a powers, Mars is in the 5th house, so there could be some power, you're getting some support from, creative self-expression, but there could be some power struggles with with authority figures, with Saturn impacting that. So there's an opportunity here as well for you, just like there was for Virgo, your opposite sign, for some travel. So there's surprising information that might come to you from that third house of communications, because again, that's where Uranus is. It's also, again, where sudden third house represents short-term travel could come up for you. But either way, there's going to be some deeply empowering realizations that come, because third and the ninth house represent decisions and our beliefs. So there's something that's happening below the surface for you that's wanting to come forward so that you can remove that tension that's there. And it might be a sudden release about something from your past. So I hope that this has been helpful. I hope that you are able to use this information to adjust and pivot, because we are almost at the midpoint, not quite, 5 months into the year, and the energy is shifting, and this full moon is helping us to make shifts and alignments into what's really important for us after we had that awakening last year in 2020. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.